Hey scholars, this is a video that goes along with the evidence and an editorial assignment. So make sure you have both documents open. So I have one document that is the assignment document, and then the other document is a slideshow. So I made a um, PowerPoint presentation slideshow with lots of slides to kind of walk you step by step of what you need to be doing to complete this assignment. And I think you'll find it very useful. So make sure you have both of those open. I recommend looking through both of them, at least browsing through both of them before you go on to listen to the rest of this video. So I recommend that you just pause this video, look through both, and then pick it back up. Okay, so this is the assignment that's called Analysis of Evidence Used in Editorial. Deadline is 11/21. I changed the point value to be less. That way, it's not weighted as heavily. Sometimes when something's weighted really heavily, it kind of creates some stress with students. And nevertheless, it's 150 points. It's a fairly short paper, so you're essentially writing a paper. It's only 2 to 3 pages. So I'm looking at the assignment document. So this assignment requires each of you to select a recent editorial from a newspaper. So the editorial has to be dated after January 1st, 2021. So I want something somewhat recent, something from this year. So I don't want you choosing something that's 10 years old. Keeps things more relevant and whatnot. The editorial has to come from a publication such as Orange County Register, Los Angeles Times, Chicago Tribune, Wall Street Journal, some like a major newspaper publication. So not some an online journal or something like a web like a blog, nothing like that. It has to come from a major news outlet such as one of those. You can come up with another one, if there's one that you really want to look into that has an editorial section, that might work. But keep in mind, it needs to be a major news outlet. So I know I lived in Louisiana for a while, and there was a big newspaper publication called the Time. It was called the Times-Picayune or something like that. It's based out of New Orleans. Maybe you're from an area, maybe you grew up in an area that has a major newspaper publication, and you'd really like to look at an issue there. That might work. But Orange County Register, LA Times, Chicago Tribune, Wall Street Journal, those four will have more than enough options for you to choose from. So what you're going to be doing is analyzing the evidence used in the editorial. So for this assignment, you want to review the sections on evidence and arguments. So basically chapters 6 and 7. So this assignment is testing the degree to which you understand the nature of evidence and the nature of using arguments to get a point across. So for those of you who are not familiar with the editorial section, if you're not familiar with reading newspapers, that's okay. You don't need to have had a very long, extensive background or whatever with reading newspapers. But what it is, the editorial section of a newspaper, or the opinion section, is generally written by a senior member of the editorial board. So the editorial board of, let's say, the Chicago Tribune. So their editorial, one of the members of their editorial board will write this editorial, and it's based on a topic. They're usually discussing a topic that the board believes is very important for their readers to know. And in these editorials, they're fairly short. They're like anywhere from 300 words to 800 words, maybe 1,000 words. So like, anywhere from like half a page to a page and a half. They're not super long. So whoever the writer is, they generally provide a description of some kind of issue, something sort of problematic in nature on all types of topics. And then they use a variety of methods to critique the details of that key issue and provide their own opinion as to what should be done. That's why they call it the opinion section. So it's the editorial. It's not one of their staff writers. It's not someone else writing in. It's them. It's one of the members of the editorial board generally who are saying, like, here's an issue that we think is important. It's problematic, and they're critiquing things. They're using some sort of argument. They're using some sort of evidence to support their opinion on something. That's what an editorial is for the most part. So make sure you get the editorial and not the op-ed. Op-ed is I believe it's an opinion written to the editorial. So it's someone giving their opinion to the editorial board or something like that. So I think that's what they call it, op-ed. Anyways, this is editorial. specifically. So I'm going to be going back and forth from this assignment document um, to the PowerPoint slide. So the key to this assignment, back on the assignment document, the key to this assignment is to answer the so what question. Why is the evidence being used? How is it being used effectively? And then how does it support the argument in the editorial? Or you might argue that the evidence is not being used effectively. You might find a really good editorial and it's interesting to you, catches your eye, catches your attention. And the thing that stands out to you the most is the degree to which they're not using the evidence very well. And you can critique that. You can critique the way that the editorial board perhaps is using evidence ineffectively. But in my opinion, it's probably just a lot easier to find something that's real obvious, to look for like obvious use of evidence as it relates to things that you read about in the textbook. So you might need to read through several editorials. So sometimes you read an editorial, you'll look through several and you're like, I don't really know how this applies to my assignment, how it applies to the assignment. I'm not sure how I would write this in the assignment. If that's the question you're asking, choose something else, right? So you might need to, so it's almost like brainstorming, but you might need to look through several different editorials before you find one that you feel that you can write about with regards to this assignment. Okay, so what you're doing, if you argue that the evidence is strong, you need to explain why it's strong. If you argue that the evidence is weak, you need to explain why it's weak. You're also going to incorporate 2 outside sources of evidence, which need to come from credible or field contextual sources, meaning whatever the topic is being discussed. So if it's something like climate change or like an environmental issue, the example I'm going to show you in the PowerPoint has to do with natural gas, using natural gas as an alternative, as an energy source. So it's an issue of like environmental sustainability, and it's loosely related to climate change. It's related to climate change indirectly, but it's specifically talking about using natural gas as an energy source. So if that were my topic, I need to find credible sources or field contextual sources that have to do with that topic. Right? The editorial is the newspaper, and it's editorial board writing their opinion on this issue of, let's say, natural gas and how it's related to the environment. So for your 2 outside sources, those sources need to be specific to natural gas, environmental issues, that kind of thing. You're also responsible for providing in-text references, so in-text source citations. So as you're writing this paper, when you're referencing the things that you read, then you need to provide that in-text source citation, whether it's the textbook, Gas Insider, the editorial itself, and which would be, according to this editorial board in Chicago Tribune or whatever. And then, of course, the outside sources. You need to have, along the same lines, you have to have a references page where you list all the bibliographic information related to your source citations. So not just a web address. More than likely, everything you're going to get is going to be online, but I'm not interested in the URL of where you got the information. I'm interested in, or for the purpose of citing sources in the bibliography, the references section, including the title of the article, the journal, the authors, the page numbers, the year, all that kind of stuff. So the sources for this assignment would include, but are not limited to, textbook, editorial, and then at least the 2 outside sources. So if you didn't include that, like not including the in-text source citations and/or not including the bibliography and the reference, and bibliography is essentially the same thing as the references section, same difference for the most part. But not including those is a plagiarism issue, and it will definitely, your grade will be severely impacted by not including those. So make sure you include those. So I give you a format for what your paper should look like, where it says introduction, main point 1, 2, 3, and conclusion. So in the introduction, so here's how you should structure your paper. The way you should structure your paper is introduction. Introduce the topic, the context, why you chose this topic, and a preview of the main points. Just like an introduction to a speech or to anything, right? Have a very brief, it's very brief, like one short paragraph is the introduction. This paper is going to talk about an editorial from the Chicago Tribune where they're talking about an issue of climate change or using natural gas as an energy source. I chose the topic because I drive a car that's electric and these topics are interesting to me. And in this paper, I will, and then you give a preview of your main points, right? That's the introduction. one thing I mentioned before when it comes to writing papers is that in general, I personally think it's easier to write the introduction when you're finished with the paper, or in other words, at the end of your writing. So once you've developed, once you've written main point one, main point two, main point three, and then conclusion, then I go back and write the introduction. That's how I do it. The logic is sometimes as a grad student for several years, I found it very challenging to write an introduction to something that I hadn't yet written. So instead of writing the introduction first, I just in my skeleton outline, I start out with an outline, and I have a section that says introduction, and then I write type me, and big bold letters, and I highlight it yellow, and that way I know at some point I need to go back and type it. That's one of the strategies I've used when writing a lot. In other words, as I'm writing, if I can't think of something in the moment, like a transition or a source citation or an analogy to help explain this, I type in all caps, in bold, all caps, and highlight yellow. Type me. Need a reference here. Need a transition here. Need an analogy here. Something like that. That way, if I get writer's block, I'm not going to be stuck on that section. Then I just move on, and then I go back at some point, obviously, and then fill it in. That's how I wrote for several years, and it worked well. So main point one, provide a detailed summary of what the topic is being discussed in the editorial. What's the problem? Why is it significant? What's being proposed to solve or address the problem? So what's going on? Give me the who, what, when, where, why, how, so on and so forth. Like what are the issues and whatnot. Okay, that'll be either one long paragraph or a couple paragraphs, or probably one longer paragraph. Main point two, that's where you're going to develop an argument as to why the evidence is strong or weak. Explain the nature of how the editor is discussing the issue. What's their argument? What kind of reasoning is being used? So the chapter 7 on inductive reasoning, that chapter in the PowerPoint in my video talks all about inductive reasoning. What are they using? And this is an opportunity to demonstrate the way that you understand argumentation, to demonstrate the way that you understand the different kinds of reasoning, that have been discussed, the different types of arguments that have been discussed in this class that are in the textbook and PowerPoint lecture video, right? And it's not like there's only one right answer. Don't think like, oh my gosh, what if I use the wrong one? Based on what you write and how you write about it, that to me will demonstrate the way you understand reasoning. So this is an opportunity for you to have your voice be heard in this paper. Okay, that's the reasoning. What kind of evidence is being used? So the chapter 6 on evidence. How do you understand the kind of evidence that's being used, right? Go back to the chapter on evidence, review that, look at the PowerPoint again, listen to the video again if you need to, but based on what you see in the editorial, what kind of evidence is being used? And then how are evidence and reasoning being utilized to advance their position on the topic being discussed? In other words, this is your opportunity with that question: how are evidence and reasoning being used to advance their position on the topic being discussed? How are they making their argument, right? You're first talking about the reasoning and then their evidence, and then you're kind of bringing it all together. Like, here's the way that the editor is trying to make their argument. It's kind of like redundant. It sounds a little bit redundant, but you're just kind of synthesizing everything together. All right, main point 3. Your overall assessment of the evidence used in the editorial. So this is when you articulate your own informed opinion regarding the degree to which the editorial board has provided a reasonable argument regarding the problems and solution discussed within the editorial piece. So you're kind of just giving your overall opinion. Is this reasonable? Does it make sense, right? In main point 2, you're just talking about what is, right? What's their reasoning? What kind of evidence is being used? Is it strong or weak? And then main point 3 is just more like your overall assessment. Like, so here's what I think, right? It just doesn't seem reasonable. Like, here's their evidence, here's their reasoning, and here's the issue. And basically, I think it's not a reasonable argument, or I think it is a reasonable argument, and here's why. So it's more like your opinion, right? And then finally the conclusion. is you synthesize your analysis, addressing the so what question. Provide some sort of your own, provide some of your own perspectives on what you think should happen at this point, considering the issue that was discussed. So, what do you think, right? So, if it's the issue of natural gas, I'll reference that in a second. What do you think should be happen? I mean, what do you think should happen with this issue? Consider all the parties that are affected. So, I'm going to be referencing something in Chicago from the Chicago Tribune. So when I talk about my opinions and my thoughts on what should happen in that area and the people who were involved and what should happen from this point forward with the automobile industry or the different types of parties who are affected by the use of natural gas, I'm giving my final thoughts in the conclusion. And that's it. And then of course, introduction. You know, if it were me writing after I'm done with everything, then it's easier to write the introduction. So in the other details, they say, you know, use 12-point times New Roman font, double space, and 1-inch margins all around. So if I say have a 2 to 3 page paper, it's based on the fact that it's 12-point times New Roman font, double spaced, and 1-inch margins all around. If you had 14-point Arial font, triple spaced with 1.5-inch margins all around, then obviously it's not the same. And if you don't know the obviousness of that, then just make sure you follow directions. Because if you had a 3-page paper with those parameters, then it's not a 3-page paper in the sense of APA. So this is APA style. Don't be too concerned about writing APA versus MLA or whatever. Just basically follow the directions and you'll be fine. 12-point times New Roman font, double spaced, 1-inch margins all around. Make sure you proofread. Like I said, there's no specific page requirement. If it's 7 pages long, I probably won't read all of it. If it's only 1 page, it's definitely not going to be long enough to satisfy this assignment. But like I said, the work is primarily graded on the degree to which the details of your assignment specifications are properly followed. You don't need a cover page. All you need to do is put your name, just include your name, and then have page numbers. Make sure you have a references page, and then make sure you include a copy of the actual editorial. So you'll have your assignment, let's say it's a 3-page assignment, and then you'll have your references page, and then at the very end you have the actual editorial. So copy and paste that editorial into a Word document and include it within this whole document. I have a student sample available that's going to be really useful for you to read through. So obviously with the student sample, your assignment cannot be the same editorial as the student sample. That should be obvious. Okay, that's a lot, but I wanted to be very detailed in explaining to you what you need to do and then the nature of this assignment and what it all entails. All right, let's go to the PowerPoint. I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. So as you're looking at the PowerPoint, the whole point of this PowerPoint is to help you with finding information. So finding the newspaper databases, the editorials, and the other 2 required outside sources. So I'm going to go through this quickly. So you might need to pause this video from time to time to follow along online. So make sure you have, as you're watching this, listening to this, make sure you have access to your laptop or desktop. I highly recommend using a laptop or desktop as you're going through this versus a mobile device. Generally, if you have a problem with this kind of thing, usually the problem is because you're on a mobile device versus a laptop or desktop. An iPad might work, but like I said, I highly recommend from this point forward for the rest of the video to be on a laptop or desktop. Okay, so go to the main page of our campus Cal State Fullerton, fullerton.edu. So go there, and then you want to click on the thing that says Quick Links on that top. And then when you go to Quick Links, scroll down to Pollock Library, click on Pollock Library, and then you'll get to this thing that says, you see this Pollock Library, databases, so on and so forth, and then there's something called Services. Click on Services. Then you'll click on Journals. Yeah, Journal Search. Sorry, I couldn't. The print was so small I couldn't even read it. So click on when you're in the Services, click on Journal Search, and then you'll be taken to this where I'm on slide 5 now. So under Journal Search, That's when you can type in Chicago Tribune, Orange County Register, LA Times, Wall Street Journal, so on and so forth. I don't know all that the library carries, but they carry quite a bit. So click on Chicago Tribune, and what you'll see, you get 18 results. Those first two that you see, it says online access, but if you click on those, it only gives you access from like um, two different time periods, not current. So you don't get the last several years. So you click on that third one where it says Journal, Chicago Tribune. Click on where it says online access, or just click on the thing that says Chicago Tribune or online access. I forget which one you click. Then you're taken to this one on slide 6. It says Chicago Tribune, ProQuest Global News Stream available from 2/23/2017. So ProQuest is just a database. It's like Google, but it's just the database used for this newspaper. Click on that where it says ProQuest Global News Stream. Then you'll get to slide 7. And then from there, that's when you can see all the different ways that you can search, right? It says choose an issue to review. So if you, it just automatically shows you the current issue, which is from November, I guess it's November 1st through the 15th. That's today's day. And you see there's 34 articles within Chicago Tribune that are available to you. So one thing you do, you could search, it says search within this issue. If you typed in editorial, where it says search within this issue, type in editorial, you'll get one editorial. And you want to look at, you'll want to look at more than just one, right? But nevertheless, if you did that, then you'll see what you get is the very next slide, slide 8, editorial. Businesses are steamed at Assessor Kagi. Their anger would be better directed elsewhere. I read through that one, and it's I'm not even really sure what it was talking about, in all honesty. So if it were me, I wouldn't choose that topic because I'm like, I'm not even really sure what I'm reading. So go back to that main page. Where it says, one second. Okay, now I saw where it was. So go back to the main page that you were initially at when you clicked on Chicago Tribune. It's the page that you see on slide 7. So now instead of just searching within the issue, I said search within the issue, click editorial, and then you got the one editorial. Instead of doing that, you're going to expand your search and search within the entire publication. So where it says search within this publication, type in editorial, and then you should get what you see on slide 9. So then you see over 7,000 results. And you don't want to be looking through 7,000 results. So we want to narrow that search. Look at slide 10. Go to custom date range. Or when you first get to that thing that says 7,000 results, scroll down where it says custom date range, and then you put in January 1st of this year to today's date. And now you go from over 7,000 results to 1,300 results. And then if you're familiar with these types of applications, if you're familiar with these kinds of searches, you know that there's so many things that you can do to customize your search. If this is all new to you, then try to take a very simple approach, as simple of approach, as possible. Slide 11 shows you how you can look at subject. So if you click at subject, you can look for specific topics. So instead of looking at all 1,300 editorials, you can look at editorials according to topics. So that's what I did. I went into topics, and you can click include or exclude. It gives you a whole list of all the different topics. Include, exclude, include, exclude. So that's what I did, just to play around with it, just to see what that would come up with. And so I did that with mine, and I clicked apply or save or OK or something like that. And then what you see is my results with slide 12. So it says all the filters were applied. So labor unions, legislators, presidents. I mean, I just chose the things that I was interested in, and I excluded the things that I didn't care to learn about. And then from there, I just scrolled through a bunch of the different editorials, I clicked on a few that seemed interesting to me. I read through some of them, and some were like, "Oh yeah, that seems interesting." But ultimately, I just wanted to find something that was easy. Like, what can I find that's going to be easy to write about? That's my advice to you. Try to find something. Obviously, the topic should be interesting to you, and make sure that it applies to the assignment. Some of the editorials, they might be so short, and you're like, I don't really see the evidence. I don't see the reasoning. I don't see the argument. Don't use that one. Try to find one that's easy for you, because they're not all the same. There's so many different types. So I finally found one that was interesting to me, and in the title of the editorial, it was number 24, result number 24. It says why natural gas should be part of our environmental strategy. That was super interesting to me. It stood out. I read through that. I'm like, okay, yeah, I can totally see how this is related to this assignment, the editorial assignment. So I read through that. Um, so if this were yours, if I mean, obviously don't use this one since I'm using this as an example. But if it were yours, you could. There might be a way. There's a button that says Save as PDF. So whatever editorial you end up choosing, click on Save as PDF. You could highlight it and then copy and paste it into a Word document. Doesn't really matter a whole lot, but you know, I would say might as well utilize that whole uh, that feature where it says Save as PDF. And then you see your source citation: Chicago Tribune, Tribune Publishing Company, LLC, September 27th, 2021. That's the kind of reference that you need in the references section in the bibliography. In terms of the in-text source citation, I'm not too concerned about how you cite it. You can say according to the editorial, according to the Chicago Tribune editorial, September 27th, 2021, and then you have information. I don't care that much, but as long as you're providing that in-text source citation, that's fine. I read through that. I was like, okay, that's what I'll write about. Now, the other part of this assignment is that you need to find, and by the way, there are so many editorials, so you might spend a while. You might get lucky, and in 10 minutes you find your editorial, but you might need to spend more than 10 minutes. You might need to spend 20 or 30 or 40 minutes. But I definitely recommend that you search enough editorials that you find one that really sticks out to you. The reason I chose Chicago Tribune is just to get an outside perspective, to see what's going on. I was interested to see what's going on in another part of our nation. But you could choose Orange County Register, something that's here at your hometown, so to speak, or LA Times, or Wall Street Journal, New York Times. But yeah, Chicago Tribune is a big one, so I just chose that one. And there's a lot to choose from. Now I need my two outside sources, my field contextual credible sources that I'm going to use in my whole development and my analysis and my critique on this whole issue, right? The issue of natural gas and why it should be part of our environmental strategy. So I'm critiquing what the editor wrote. I'm critiquing what's in the editorial in terms of the evidence they're using and their reasoning and the issue at hand, right? There's a lot that's going on. So go back to the Pollock Library. So go back to fullerton.edu, click on Pollock Library, and then you want to click on databases. And then you'll click on, then you'll get here where we're on slide 14, then you'll see, Pollock Library, click on databases, and then it says browse by database name. Then you can click on A for, it says browse by database name, click on A. And then usually, I think it's the third one down, it should be Academic Search Premier. I'm just checking that real quick. So yeah, databases. When I click on databases, it automatically goes A through Z databases. And the second one down is Academic Search Premier. So you'll go there. And then what you'll see is slide 15. Academic Search Premier. EBSCOhost is just the database. It's like the search engine, rather, like Google, right? So within here, you want to now choose specific subject databases. So that little blue hyperlink next to Academic Search Premier on the top, where it says Choose Databases, left click on that, just one click, and then you'll be taken to a list of subject specific databases. And then it says Choose Databases, slide 16. You see all these subject specific databases. Now what you can do is you can take your cursor and you hover over each text box. As you hover over each text box, a brief description pops up, and a bubble pops up and gives you a brief description of that subject specific database. So I clicked on the one that says America, History, and Life. I read through that and I thought that seems relevant to the whole nature of natural gas and how it's affecting the way we're powering our homes and cars and all that kind of stuff, right? America, History, and Life talks about the culture of the United States. It seems relevant to that topic. Worst case scenario, I might get a few extra um, results that aren't super relevant. That's okay. And then the other one that's extremely relevant for this particular topic is green file. So slide 17, I clicked on green file. Green file talks about scholarly government general interest titles of content on global warming, which is now called climate change, obviously green building, pollution, sustainable agriculture, renewable energy, recycling, and more, yada, yada, yada. Human impact of the environment. Okay, so this is extremely relevant for this topic. This is how we get good material, right? So garbage in, garbage out, field credible sources, field contextual sources. These are going to be your expert sources on this specific topic of natural gas. This is how you get good information. So I click on those two, and then go and then click OK. Click OK, and then now you have this. Now you're back to this box where it says Academic Search Premier. It says Show All, and the hyperlink there. It's just showing you all the different subject specific databases that you chose. And now I'll type in natural gas. Right, typed in natural gas. I hit search. Initially, I got 180,000 hits, but after you do that, you can go down and you click where it says scholarly. It says limit to on the far left part of the screen, kind of towards the bottom. It says limit to, and then click the box that says scholarly peer reviewed journals. I clicked on that and it took my results from 180,000 down to 127,000. So you want to make sure you get peer reviewed journals, get good information, expert sources. That's still so much to choose from, right? 127,000 natural gas. It's like anything related to natural gas pops up. So one option is you can look through that page by page. It's sorted by relevance. So you're gonna, it's not like you need to look through 127,000 different results, but within a few pages, by browsing through maybe 50, that should give you an idea of what's out there. By the way, you can click on the button that says on the far right, kind of towards the top, says page options. If you click on page options, you can choose to see 50 results at a time as opposed to 10 results at a time. I prefer it that way. It's easier to look through stuff. Okay, so that's one way to do it. Look through all the documents and articles, and then look through all the results and see what stands out to you. But for me, I want to be more specific. I want to be more strategic. So I additionally typed in I additionally typed in under slide 19, I typed in environmental sustainability. As soon as you start typing environment, all these like potential search terms pop up, and then I chose the one that seemed like the most relevant to the editorial. So I typed in, so the one that popped up that was the most relevant was environmental sustainability. I clicked on environmental sustainability. I clicked search, and now I have 900 results. Instead of 127,000, I have 900. So it's a much more focused, specific type of search. And now I look through the results, and it's getting like to this really nice nugget kernel of knowledge, a source that's going to really help me understand how to write this paper a little bit better. So the one that stood out to me the most was that third one down, environmental sustainability of renewable hydrogen in comparison with conventional cooking fuels. That sounds pretty interesting. So I clicked on that link, and then it says you find it at Pollock Library. I don't have all the screenshots showing you how to do this. You should definitely be able to figure this out. It's very easy. So you click on the link, click on the article, find it at Pollock Library. I went through all the steps. I downloaded the PDF, and then this is what I found. So slide 20. So this is a really good article from Journal of Cleaner Production. This is definitely a credible source for the topic of natural gas, right? Journal of Cleaner Production by these authors. Um, you see their credentials, Rivera, Tapriska, Colocotroni, and Azapagic. Very interesting names. And then you look at their credentials: Center for Sustainable Energy Use in Food Chains and Sustainable Industrial Systems Group. Super relevant stuff, right? And then I just read the abstract. Hydrogen could be used as a cleaner cooking fuel, and it's looking at renewable hydrogen, environmental sustainability. It's related to my topic. Um, of how to sustain the environment, right? So I might read through this, and I might spend a few minutes reading through this article, and I realize, you know what? I feel like this is not the best article for me to use for my paper. So I scrap it and I go back to my search results. So the point is, I'm just showing you how to find the information. It's up to you to determine which articles you think are going to be the most relevant. You only need two. Keep in mind, you only need two. So chances are, if this were my assignment, I could find both articles within the search results of 900. I only looked at the first three, right? The third one stood out to me, but if I look further and further, I'll find one that's going to be super relevant for me, and that's what I'll use for this assignment. Now, it might be 15-20 page article. You don't need to spend 3 hours reading through that very dense scholarly peer-reviewed journal article. That takes an immense amount of time, but you need to read enough so that you understand what's going on. Enough of it. So the abstract is just a summary of what's going on, and then there's a literature review, and then there's usually some sort of an experiment they conduct, or a study that they're doing, or a survey or something like that. And then they talk about the survey results. The authors talk about the survey results, and then after that they talk about, like, okay, here's what we found, right? Here are they explain the results. So they have the results with all the statistical figures and whatnot. You might be reading through that and you're like, I have no idea what I'm reading. That's okay. Don't even worry about that. But the most relevant stuff, the most important stuff, is more towards the end of the article, when they're explaining the results and what the results mean, and the discussion and the conclusion, and like, this is what it all means. So my advice is read the abstract, read a little bit through the literature review, just understand like the nature of what they're doing, but just kind of scroll, have a filter in your mind's eye of what you need to be reading, of what you need to be looking for. What you need to be looking for is the author's explanation of material subjects that are related specifically to the editorial that you're writing about. So have that filter in your mind prior to begin reading this, because you don't want to spend 3 hours reading an article and you're like, man, wasn't that relevant? So have that filter in your mind's eye. Okay, what do I need to be looking for? How is it related to the editorial, to this assignment? And then start to just have that focused approach to how you read through this article. In some sections, you'll skim through like the methods. Maybe you're like, I don't really need to know how they collected the data, unless that's really interesting to you. But for this assignment, you don't need to know about the methods. Most importantly, you need to know about the way they discuss the subjects that are related to your editorial. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that helps. This is a lot of information. This is a long video, I know that, but I just want to give you detailed information on how to find the information. So once you find your editorial, and once you find your two sources, after that, the actual writing process is fairly easy, right? So that's why I put so much emphasis on finding the editorial, a good one, and finding really good sources. Because once you get those, now it's just a matter of going through them, highlighting things, taking notes on the actual journal itself, on the actual articles themselves. I recommend printing them out. Once you get your editorial and your two sources, I recommend printing them out in hard copy and just taking notes on them, and then begin writing the outline. Point by point, main point by main point, have a skeleton outline. Next thing you know, you'll have a good long outline, and then you'll take that outline and turn it into a formal essay. Keep in mind, it's only going to be about 2 to 3 pages. So definitely read through the student sample, as I think that will really, really help you. to kind of wrap your head around what you're doing. And that's that. Hope you're all doing well. Talk to you later. Bye.